Welcome to the February 20th, 2024 Eugene City Council public hearing. Thank you for joining us in this hybrid meeting format. Anyone wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by following the instructions listed for this meeting on the public webcast and meeting materials web page. There are 4 public hearings on tonight's agenda. Please note that members of the public who sign up to testify may speak only on the topic that is the subject of the stated hearing. For those wishing to testify during the public hearing, please fill out a request to speak form available on the city's public webcast and meeting materials webpage or at the entrance to this room for those of you who are in person. These requests to speak forms will be used to generate the order of speakers and correctly enter speakers' names into the public record. And we'll accept requests to speak forms until 5:35. For those of you who are joining the meeting by phone and wish to testify, but are unable to complete the request to speak form online, press *9 and the last 3 digits of your phone number will be added to the speaker's queue. And as a reminder, we ask you to create a very safe and respectful place, no loud or disruptive sounds or language, and you can always show your positive support by wiggling your fingers. And with that, I think we are ready for the first of the public hearings, the Pittsford Plan amendments and zone change, and I will turn to the city manager to introduce it.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, the Eugene City Council is holding a public hearing to consider a Metro Plan amendment and refinement plan amendment that would change the land use designation on the subject property to light medium industrial. These amendments are necessary for the applicant's concurrent request to change the zoning of the property from E1 campus employment to E2 mixed use employment. These changes are requested for the subject property, which is in the west part of Eugene, just southwest of the intersection of West 11th and Willow Creek Road. The applicant has requested these changes to allow for a wider diversity of industrial and employment uses on the property as discussed in the agenda item summary. Tonight's public hearing only and deliberations are tentatively scheduled for March 11th, and we have staff here if questions come up.
Great, thank you. The City Council's role in this process is to approve with modifications, or deny the application. The decision-making process for this application is considered quasi-judicial, so we will use a quasi-judicial format for this public hearing. And so to start, I will ask city councilors if you have any need to disclose any bias, conflicts of interest, ex parte communications, or abstentions pursuant to EC 9.7065. All right, I am seeing none. All right, and then I can go on. So we'll go on to the testimony. Testimony presented at this public hearing should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria or other criteria that the speaker believes apply to the decision. The applicable approval criteria for this Metro Plan amendment, refinement plan amendment, and zone changes are located in Eugene Code sections 9.7735, 9.8424, and 9.8865. The full text of those code sections is available in the findings attached to the AIS for this public hearing. The failure of anyone to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the City Council and parties an opportunity to respond will preclude appeals on that issue. For quasi-judicial proceedings, once the public hearing is opened, speakers will be called in the following order: those in support, including the applicant, those with the neutral position, and third, those who are opposed. If you would like to receive future notice of this application and become an interested party, please provide your name and mailing address with your testimony or reach out to staff with this information. And I will now open the public hearing. And I believe we are joined by the applicant's representative, Kim O'Day of Metro Planning, and would like to offer Kim the opportunity to make a statement.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Most of the statement, I don't have a lot to say other than this proposal just allows us broader uses to put this site to use. And the staff report is well written and very thorough. And so really, I'm just here for any questions that counselors might have.
Okay, thank you very much. So Cherish, do we have any other folks signed up to speak?
Give me just a moment, Mayor. We just closed the list.
Oh, right.
We have no speakers for Pitchford besides Kim.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I will, let's see. Guess we don't have any rebuttal. I will now close the hearing. I'm assuming there are no objections to that. Sorry, I did that before I gave you a chance. And I will also close the record for this application. Okay, so with that, we are ready for our second public hearing, an ordinance extending the sunset date of safe parking and safe tent sites ordinance. And again, I'll turn to the city manager to introduce this.
Thank you, Mayor. This public hearing is an opportunity to hear from the community on the draft ordinance to extend the sunset date for the safe parking and safe tent ordinance by 12 months to the end of June of 2025. Following council direction in 2021, the city created new shelters to address a dramatic increase in public space camping during the pandemic. We created over 250 new shelter spaces using one-time funding. Extending the sunset date of the ordinance is needed in order to utilize additional one-time state funds and operate the shelters into the coming fiscal year. Action on the draft ordinance is on the tentative agenda for February 26th.
Okay, thank you. We'll now open the public hearing and again turn to Cherish to share the list of speakers.
We have one speaker for this topic, and that speaker is Bill Armstrong. All right. Bill Armstrong, now that you've been called to speak, when you come up, please state your name and your ward or neighborhood, if known, before beginning your comments.
My name is Bill Armstrong. And I'm in
Sorry, Bill, just a moment. You will have 2.5 minutes to speak. If you are watching the meeting, the timer should be visible. A yellow light will come on when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of the 2.5 minutes. Your microphone will be muted at the 2.5 minute mark. Please note that any use of profanity is prohibited, and any instances of profanity will result in immediate termination of speaking privilege.
Okay, go. Okay, my name's Bill Armstrong. I live in Ward 1. And thank you for providing me this opportunity to talk. I live near 8th and Madison, that intersection, and frequently 4 or 5 RVs and multiple other campers are parked within a 1-block radius of our house. The huge vehicles narrow the traffic down to 1 lane, making access to our homes more difficult and posing a safety problem because 8th is designated as an emergency route.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm thinking that you are testifying for the wrong public hearing.
I'm sorry, Mayor. No one had signed up for the second one, so I jumped ahead.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm sorry, Bill.
Yeah, so am I in the wrong one?
You're in the wrong one. So we'll come back to you if you wouldn't mind sitting down and we'll let.
Good practice,
It
though.
was
Yeah.
good practice.
Next time you got to say take 2.
Oh, so there's no one to speak. Oh, thank you. Okay, but with that, I will close this public hearing. And I'm assuming there are no questions or comments from council on that. And with that, we'll move on to the next public hearing, Chapter 5 parking amendments. And then I will turn again to the city manager.
This sounds familiar.
Armstrong's going to come up.
Bet you we only have one person.
This public hearing is related to council work that has been intended to identify regulatory gaps to address repeat parking violators. The proposed traffic code amendments include limiting a vehicle to parking once per day for the maximum time allowed on the block, prohibiting a vehicle from blocking a mailbox, allowing a vehicle to be impounded after a third violation of 5.2253E, which prohibits larger size vehicles from parking overnight near places of sleeping accommodations, and adding a discharge violation to Chapter 5 to enable enforcement by parking services. The public hearing also includes proposed code amendments that increase the maximum allowed fine levels for parking-related violations and removes maximum on-street parking meter rate. Those maximums were set in the 1980s. Deliberation and action are scheduled for Monday, March 11th.
Okay, thank you. I now open this public hearing and I'm thinking we know what's happening next, but I'll turn it to you, Cherish.
Yes, Bill Armstrong. Here's our take two. Thank you.
Everybody seen Bill? Oh, all right, there you go.
Forgot what I said. Okay, just go ahead. Hi, I'm Bill Armstrong, and thank you for providing this opportunity to speak. I live near 8th and Madison in Ward 1, and frequently 4 or 5 RVs and multiple other campers are parked within a 1-block radius of our home. The huge vehicles narrowed down the traffic down to 1 lane, making access to our homes more difficult and posing a safety problem because 8th is designated an emergency route. Criminal activity appears to increase in direct proportion to the number of campers. I remember when we didn't need to lock our doors in Eugene, not anymore. Anything left in our front yards, porches, driveways is stolen in broad daylight. Even our welcome mat was stolen off our porch. Just 3 weeks ago, a group of campers gathered on the sidewalk on 8th, disassembling and spray painting bike parts on the sidewalk right during the day. The city of Eugene process for forced removal of camping RVs is not working. We have to wait 72 hours after an RV arrives to report a camping RV. Then Parking Services takes 3 days to place notice on the vehicle. Then the RV has 3 days to move. That's 9 days. After being forced to move, the RV owner drives the RV a few blocks away, waits 3 days, then returns to their previous location. And then the process starts again, over and over with the same RVs. I've complained to Parking Services and they tell me they recognize the problem, but they can't do much unless City Council changes the rules. On top of that, many campers leave behind mounds of garbage strewn across the sidewalk and street with no regard to the environment. Tents, sleeping campers, stolen grocery carts block sidewalks. RV generators spread smoke and noise. Some people feel that the campers have a right to live and sleep wherever they please. But what about our right to live without criminals stalking our neighborhoods? What about our right to have...
Thank you, Bill. Your time is concluded. Mayor, that was our final speaker for this topic.
Thank you very much. I now close the public hearing and councilors with comments. Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to ask the city attorney a question here. My recollection was with some portions of overnight camping, we voted on enhanced punishments for particular things, specifically willful violations is my recollection. If somebody is cited and asked to leave from a place where they leave for 3 days, they come right back to the same place, knowing how the system works and are working to try and work around the existing rules. Why isn't that a willful violation that qualifies for a stronger penalty?
Thank you for the question, Councilor Clark. I will probably need to get back to you because there are a number of overlaying regulations that apply to the situation that you're describing. We have our prohibited camping code provisions. We also have specific parking regulations. And then there are state law parking regulations that kind of lie over the top. So I don't can't answer your question right now, but I'm happy to get back to you.
Please be specific with that if you can, where if our current ordinance doesn't apply for enhanced punishment for a willful violation for some reason, I'd love to know what we would need to change in order for that it would apply. In other words, what sort of new ordinance might we need, or what would we need to do to change an ordinance? Because I think it's a waste of everybody's time to chase folks around. And I don't think that people living with this problem should have to. And so, somebody should learn that lesson, and I'd like us to be able to consider that. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Bill, for coming forward and testifying on this. This is a problem in our community. It's a problem in other communities as well, going up and down the I-5 corridor. And they're correct. The state law is part of it with the 72 hours piece. But there are things we can do. And my understanding of what's been brought forward for the public hearing was a next step in trying to address this and be able to protect people that are being victimized. And, it's one of those things where I believe we should lead with compassion, and that's the safe sleep sites and places like that. But the bottom line is we also need to have accountability, responsibility, and consequences. And that's the piece that you're getting at, so that we can make this work. And as I've dug into this issue, because I have the same problem in my ward, Ward 8, which is southwest Eugene. What I have found is people in this position, there's a very small number actually that are repeat offenders. And I'm looking at Jeff Petrie right now. I believe it's somewhere in the 40 range, but there's many more people than that aren't attracting attention all the time. But it's the same group that just moves around. I've got a number of them in my ward that basically move between 3 spots. And it's like clockwise or counterclockwise. They just keep hitting the same spaces. So we do need to figure this out. And I know I'm going to keep working on it, and I know my colleagues are as well, but we do hear you. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Counselor Semple.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for coming twice. I'd like to have a little deja vu in February. I walk my dog past your house most days and all the way around, and it's a big problem. We have a lot of RVs. Sometimes they repeat. Sometimes they just come for a night. That's not as bad. They usually don't leave garbage behind. But the garbage is really a big problem, and it stays after they're gone. And I just want to emphasize, yes, you are correct, Bill, and I hope that we can help the situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my recollection at the November 8th work session when council passed unanimously to bring this back. That was the work session in which I was citing the repeat offenders that Councilor Groves alluded to near Tugman Park, who were causing alarm in the neighborhood because of potential raw sewage that was stormwater, drain water, or gray water that was being dumped near the park right by Donald. I just want to say thank you to my colleagues, not only for advancing this work session unanimously, but for staff for coming up with a response that I think is strong, indicating that an operator shall not drain vehicular wastewater or any other contaminated source on any street, sidewalk, access way, or shared path, and the associated stormwater or near the associated stormwater drainage system or adjacent wetlands. A violation of this section is deemed an immediate risk to public health and safety. In addition to this ordinance, a citation for the violation, recreational or camping vehicle is subject to immediate impoundment in accordance with Eugene City Code. It's my understanding that we're also adjusting the potential fine to go from $50 to $300 if this ordinance passes. Is all that accurate?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Well, on behalf of the neighbors who are reaching out to me, complaining regularly that got us to this point, I appreciate the swift response. And I hope it curbs behavior and allows for that park and that part of the park to be used more safely without the threat of increased environmental hazard. So thank you, staff, for that. Bill, right? Bill, you said it twice. I should know. Bill, thank you for coming and testifying this evening.
Okay, thank you. Any other counselors with comments or questions? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you again for coming to testify. And with that, we are ready for our fourth public hearing, middle housing remand ordinance. And again, I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, the Eugene City Council is holding a public hearing to consider an ordinance readopting the city's middle housing code, which was previously adopted in the summer of 2022. Following its adoption, the 2022 Middle Housing Code was appealed and ultimately remanded back to the city to address compliance with statewide Planning Goal 11 for public facilities and services. The ordinance for this hearing addresses the singular remand issue and also includes updates for new code provisions and consistency with state law, as well as Scrivener's errors corrections. Tonight is a public hearing only, and deliberations are scheduled tentatively for March 11th.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I now open the public hearing and again turn it over to Cherish for the list of speakers.
We have 6 speakers this evening. I will announce 2 speakers' names at a time. When you are called to speak, please state your name and ward or neighborhood if known before beginning your comments. When you are announced as the next speaker, please move to the seat in the front row designated for the next speaker. When it is your turn, you may come to the podium. Please leave any bags you may have with you at your seat. If you have documents to give counsel, please place them in the basket near the podium. You will have 2.5 minutes to speak. The timer should be visible. A yellow light will come on when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of the 2.5 minutes. Please note that use of profanity is prohibited, and any instances of profanity will result in immediate termination of speaking privileges. Our first speaker this evening is Sandra Bishop, followed by Charlie Rojas.
Good evening, Sandra Bishop. I'm in Ward 2. I feel like I've won the lottery. The last time I testified, it was at 11:45 p.m. I'm here to ask a couple questions, but basically, I'm disappointed that the city has pretty much been unresponsive to the 8-to-1 comments that came in on this particular ordinance. Many people who are experts in land use out in the community told you that you're going down the wrong road. So I'm very sorry the council didn't consider the citizens on this. I've talked to many people who are not going to be here tonight because they think it's just not worth it to talk to the council anymore. I do want to thank you for 2 parts of this issue, and that is for keeping the 2 stories, not pumping this up to 3, and also for the 50% coverage of a lot rather than 75. But having said that, the primary question that is arising again and again is how much public money has been used on these legal appeals and answers to the remand, and how much more is the council willing to spend? Because if you go forward with what you have now, there'll be another remand. So seriously, I would really appreciate it if a counselor would ask the question of how much has gone for legal fees for this process so far. I know as a citizen, I can do that. It's very laborious, and I'm not sure if I would get all the information, but please look at how much public money has gone into this process. And in future, I hope that you will listen more carefully to the experts and people who know what they're talking about in the community when they're trying to help you with some of these land use and planning issues. So I look forward to having the answer to that question. Thank you. Not tonight, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Our next speaker is Charlie Rojas, followed by Tiffany Edwards.
Charlie Rojas, Ward 7. Given what happened with the Middle Housing Amendment, I think it's important to try and figure out the efficacy of this city council. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. What are the rents for the designation of affordable housing? I've been asking the city many times, and I'm not the only one, what are those rents? Give us a rent schedule. And we've been told, well, we neither dictate or predict the rent. That's ridiculous. In other words, you don't even know what you're talking about. When I go try and buy a lease or find a lease apartment, I don't go in there and ask if it's affordable, middle housing, or any other thing. I want to know what the rents are. I think it's apparent that it's time for you to start asking before anything is built, what do you predict, what do you suspect are going to be the rents? Are they going to make sense? Are they going to be fitting with what's happening economically? And this leads to my second question that's directed to Lindsay Leach. In 2020, the consolidated plan of Eugene Springfield was published. And in 2017, 21% of Eugene households, this is 2017, long before COVID lockdowns, 21% of Eugene households were below federal poverty level. Now, Lindsay, you're in Ward 7, Train Song, which is arguably the poorest neighborhood in Eugene. Would you say that it's more than 21%? Now, the city of Eugene admonished us because of the COVID lockdowns, we were going to have an increase in poverty. So what do you think it is? 21, 30, 40%? Well, that leads directly to the first question. If you're going to be building stuff where the rents do not match what people are living with or with their poverty levels or their income levels, you're building junk. You're facilitating stuff that's going to stay vacant. Third question, where's the money going to come from? Are we going to have to depend on federal magic money to pay for the construction and the rent subsidization? Start giving us a business model as to how these things are going to work. Who's moving in here? What kind of jobs do they have? What kind of incomes do they have? What kind of rents are they going to pay? And fourth, who's going to own this stuff? I'm guessing, given the experiences I've seen, much of it is going to be owned by private equity or institutional investors, many of them not in Eugene. So that means our rent money, our tax subsidizations, all that is going out of state. That's what's making us poor.
Thank you, Charlie. Our next speaker this evening is Tiffany Edwards, followed by Cindy Allen.
Mayor and councilors, I'm Tiffany Edwards of Ward 5, and I'm the Vice President of Policy and Community Development with the Eugene Chamber. The Chamber has been a staunch supporter of increasing housing diversity, affordability, and availability in our community. It is critical to supporting a thriving economy, and it goes without saying that we support the readoption of Eugene's middle housing code. And I want to thank each of you that supported it the first time around. We believe there's a significant opportunity for middle housing, and we are relying on our ability to increase both density in the corridors and with infill to meet some aggressive goals for housing. Middle housing will play an important role. I wanted to share a story of a homeowner with a county property in the River Road area inside the UGB who has an opportunity to add middle housing that is also serving as an incentive to annex his 3/4 acre property under two possible scenarios. One, to build 3 additional units of middle housing on his current property, creating a 4-plex and offering 3 units as on-site rentals. The opportunity to generate rental income provides an incentive to offset the expected increase to his property taxes. The second scenario would be to partition his parent lot and maintain it as a single unit home. And using a middle housing lot division process, add a 4-plex on his surplus property to be sold as 4 smaller homeownership opportunities. This also brings his property into the city and creates a revenue opportunity for him. And with a smaller lot, the property taxes on his parent lot may actually be a decrease from what he's currently paying at the county level on his 3/4 acre. I mention this because we have chamber members with clients actively pursuing these opportunities in these areas of our community that provide both housing and a lot of additional benefits to the city. Councilors, we just need Eugene's middle housing code put back in place. So thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Our next speaker this evening is Cindy Allen, followed by Eliza Kaczynski.
Cindy Allen. The landmark book, Behind the Green Mask, Agenda 21, was written by Rosa Corey. This astute property appraiser alerted Californians to what she and others were seeing, top-down policies following the dictates of UN Agenda 21, now Agenda 30, with the WEF, World Economic Forum, that were attempting to supersede the laws of our nation states. Attempts at massing rezoning changes, disregard for property rights, and trying to get people into stacking packs. RFK Jr.'s term, with no solar access or land for home gardens, few places for cars, all under the disguise of environmentalism. The people of Seavey Loop called it a land grab when the developers tried to rezone their farmland, while billionaires like Bill Gates are buying up farmland and acreage in record amount. Oregon was the first state to try and take away R1 zoning. HB 2001 lost in regular session, but passed by one vote in a special session led by our now governor. This should be voted on by the people of Oregon. The Eugene version is expanded HB 2001, a projected 5 times the density, with an infrastructure that in no way supports it, as confirmed by LUBA. Neighborhood associations petitioned for the minimum, and emails were 8-1 for the minimum. Why has BlackRock, owned at the top by the wealthiest of the wealthy, only organized in 1989, been allowed to develop a housing monopoly, buying up properties worldwide for more than market wages, value and wages? One of the most lucrative divisions is federally subsidized housing, but there is increasing opposition to the policies of the WEF. Recently, the CEO of BlackRock made a statement regarding the curtailing of WEF projects because of concerns over lawsuits. I have heard concerned Eugene residents talking about surety bonds and letters of liability. Klaus Schwab and his jet-setting cronies at the WEF tell us by 2030, you will own nothing and be happy. I don't think the citizens of Eugene are going to let that happen. Thank you. Please.
Sure.
Thank you, Cindy. Our next speaker this evening is Eliza Kaczynski, followed by Karen Knudsen.
Good evening. My name is Eliza Kaczynski, and I live in Ward 1. I would like to urge you to re-adopt the Middle Housing Code amendments with the additional findings as presented. We are here tonight revisiting this issue because Ted Koopman and Paul Conti appealed Eugene's Middle Housing Code amendments to the Land Use Board of Appeals. I was the lead for a group of 15 Eugene residents who intervened on the side of the city in that appeal because we supported the Middle Housing Code amendments and we're proud of Eugene for doing more than the bare minimum to address our housing shortage. As a result, I had the chance to read all of the legal briefs and arguments presented in this case. The first thing to note is that all of the arguments put forth before LUBA and the Court of Appeals that there was anything actually wrong with the code itself were rejected. Where the Court of Appeals took issue was with the findings surrounding Goal 11. The court didn't say that the code needed to change or was uncompliant in some way, just that the city needed to provide just a little bit more information in the findings. The court also helpfully outlined some ways that Eugene could have shown compliance with Goal 11. One of the options they put forward was having codes similar to that in the model code passed by the state that ensured that new middle housing could not be built on lots with insufficient infrastructure, properties that couldn't be hooked up to electrical or sewer or something like that. As it happens, Eugene's code already contained language similar to that of the model code that ensured that all new development, not just middle housing, has to be built on lots with sufficient infrastructure. The updated findings before you clarify that and show that the Middle Housing Code amendments are in full compliance with statewide land use goals, including Goal 11. When you passed the Middle Housing Code amendments, you showed your commitment to ensuring that Eugene could create customized zoning code that would allow for more housing options in Eugene. This was sent back over what amounts to an uncrossed T. There are many people in our community who are struggling because of the status quo, struggling to find housing that meets their needs and budget. Please don't let an uncrossed T undermine your commitment to doing everything that we can to address the housing crisis facing Eugene and vote to repass the amendments as written. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eliza. Our next speaker this evening, our next and final speaker, Karin Knudsen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Karin Knudsen, Ward 3, and I'm giving testimony tonight for Better Housing Together, which is an independent nonprofit and also the hub of a collective impact effort with about 50 local partners. Our mission is to increase housing affordability, diversity, and supply in Lane County. And we support Eugene's readoption of its locally guided middle housing ordinance and its emphasis on incentivizing new affordability and climate responsive housing in our community. Approaching 2 years ago, our community completed a multi-year process to customize and adopt new standards to regulate middle housing in this community, unique to our circumstances, unique to our challenges. Those customized development standards to incentivize both affordable housing and climate responsive housing, and the innovative representative engagement process that was used to help Eugene identify its path, is now being looked to by other cities and jurisdictions, states across this country who are trying to address their own housing crisis. This is work that our community has offered to help others to grapple with the same kind of difficult challenge in their particular place. In the years since this work and during a highly technical appeals process, I'm sure you all have only seen proliferation of the terms like affordability, accessibility, the need for age-friendly, walkable, equitable housing, available housing, housing that meets people's needs in any way, shape, or form. Our community is quite in need of that and quite in need of leadership around this issue. And we very much appreciate the work that you went through over many years to arrive at our middle housing ordinance and for this body's unanimous decision to support that work. This policy increases the availability of local housing, and access to more housing options is how we stabilize and lower rents to help our renters. It's how we reduce the experience of homelessness in our community, and it's how we provide both stability and opportunity to every household, all ages, who call this community home. That our council unanimously adopted this work at the end of an expansive and balanced process is something that we should be proud of and continue to work from. And we thank you for your continued efforts and absolutely support the readoption of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Karin. Mayor, that was our final speaker.
Thank you very much. I now close the public hearing and open it to councilors. Have any comments or questions on what you've heard? All right, I'm seeing none. And so again, want to thank you for testifying, and we'll be coming back with a decision. So with that, we are adjourned.